Thank you for having me to come and share my thoughts with you. It's a privilege and honor to be associated with Partners for Possibility. I've followed their work since at least 2016 on social media, between 2016 and 2017. And I then got really very curious about what this organization does, why it focuses on this sector, which is very problematic and very hard failing sector. So I thought at the time. So I set out to interview to get to know the organization better, the movement better, and set up a podcast interview with the principal at Fairview School, Ms. Hani Kruger, and the business leader partner, Ms. Kay Vitti. We're joined by Robin Whittaker, the stakeholder engagement lead. And we had a conversation about what the organization is all about. And it was a heart-to-heart conversation more than a head conversation. And I got to know quite a bit about Partners for Possibility, its emphasis on co-creating solutions, on building cross-sectoral partnerships. The idea that you don't impose solutions from outside, but you look at the existing resources within the community, within the school. What assets do you have? What can you work with? And the starting point is not the problems. They don't start with the problems. So it's not a problems-driven approach to engaging with the communities, but a solutions-driven approach to engaging with the communities. I then followed up with a chat with Louise van Rijn, and I'm happy to finally see you in person. So I saw your pictures. So exciting moments when you won the WISE Award. So different milestones that the organization has been through, and I'm really, really privileged to be part of a 1,000 plus celebration, to be part of the journey, to have a part of me in your story. So it was quite intimidating to accept this invitation to come and share my thoughts with you. And what Louise shared, or what we discussed with Louise, was pretty much the same as it was an extension of the conversation we had, and I got to know a little bit about her personal life, her personal journey, and one of the most fascinating things, and something that I observe quite a lot, is that you don't have to come from a sector to provide innovative solutions to that sector. Sometimes it's people who come outside of the sector that are able to see things differently, that are able to look for out of the box, or solutions that lie outside of the box. And because sometimes when you come from a particular sector, for an example, I work with emerging farmers in the Eastern Cape. I don't come from agriculture. Many people we work with in one of our companies are agricultural economies, agronomies. They tell you things, if sometimes they would tell you why something will not work. And you come with an approach that is very innocent. You bend your fingers a lot, but you get things going. You get things done. You provide new ways of thinking, working with people in the sector. So she worked with people in the sector. She drew resources from within the sector, school principals. So I learned a lot about the idea of shared value as a framework, as a lens that we can use to solve some of our most intractable problems in the country, some of the toughest challenges that South Africa faces today. I have my own personal journey in working in the education sector, or thinking about solutions to some of the challenges that the sector faces. I was born in Langa Township in the Western Cape. I grew up in Khayelitsha for the most part of my youth. I went to a school called Luhlaza High School in Khayelitsha, one of the first, if not the first school to be built in Khayelitsha. And when I was doing matric, one of my favorite teachers, Mr. Sharif Pando, who was my English teacher, resigned, and he explained that he wanted to start a social enterprise organization. He didn't call it a social enterprise organization at the time. He called it a youth agency, a Khayelitsha Education Resource and Information Center, because he can see from where he was that many of the young people who were coming through the school system in the township were like water pouring into a leaking sieve. They come through the schooling system. Many of them don't go all the way to complete matric, and they disappear in the township, and they form part of gangs in the township. They fall prey into drugs. They abuse drugs. Many of them die young. We grew up hearing someone was shot dead trying to hijack a car. And these were, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, or someone was beaten to death trying to break into a supermarket in the township. Or someone died from drug abuse. And he was really frustrated because he couldn't solve these problems. He was a teacher. He was just one person. And if you're a teacher, you're a subject teacher, you teach what you are assigned to teach. So he resigned to create this network of what we today call a social enterprise organization. And I was a volunteer. He mentored me, worked closely with him until I went to university. And he formed a critical part of my own journey to escape some of these challenges in the township. So that's why I am always attracted to initiatives aimed at solving challenges in education sector in particular. And I'm thinking about this idea of shared value and leadership in the context of human capital challenges in our country and the challenges of the economy. For me, those are the two most critical challenges that if we can provide solutions for, we may have a chance to build a prosperous future in our country. We may leave a sustained spiritual and material legacy for generations to come. What is shared value? Shared value for me is the idea that solutions to major complex problems in society cannot be solved by one sector or by one agency. These are problems that we often refer to in the business school lexicon as wicked problems. We call them wicked problems because they have no clear definition. They morph quickly. They do not lend themselves well to being tackled by traditional solutions, old ways of doing things. And these are problems that are characterized by, over which there are tensions between stakeholders or social stakeholders. Everyone has their own answers to these problems. And they are problems that you cannot throw money to and make them go away. So we call them wicked problems. And you find these wicked problems largely in the educational space and in the economy. When we talk about high levels of youth unemployment or deepening levels of inequality, high levels of poverty, high failure rates, or kids that are not able to progress beyond school or reach the matric level. So in case some of you would like to have the speech, it's written. It's just that I'm not very good at reading. So I'm happy to share so that you don't say, this fellow came to speak, to blow hot air. He was clearly unprepared and, So these challenges today, wherever you look in the world, there is a growing recognition that major challenges that are confronting societies, and these challenges range from those that I've alluded to: education, challenges related to health, pandemics, challenges related to food shortages, waste, environment, energy-related challenges, challenges of famine. They are no longer solved by governments alone. So we've moved away from the dispensation or the way of existing where governments can simply come and solve these problems or throw money into these problems. We know in this country, government set aside 260 billion rands annually for basic education, but these problems aren't going away. So that tells us that just throwing money to problems does not create sustained solution. So there's a growing acknowledgement of the importance of working collaboratively across sectors, or what in Partners for Possibilities we call cross-sectoral partnerships between government, business, and community, or social enterprises. And this is true for both macro level type challenges, those challenges that we see on TV or that occupy much of the broadsheets of our newspapers, as well as challenges at the local level. We simply can no longer tackle these wicked problems just on our own, as teachers, as school principals, or as business leaders. Corporate social investment, if you look at the budgets of corporate social investments, the amount of money that is devoted to education, it's massive. Yet the problem remains with us. What that tells me is that in order for us to get a grip of some of these problems, we need collective wisdom, we need shared value, shared understanding of the kind of future that we want to create, and collective strength. And if we don't do that, we are simply going to fail to tackle these realities. And these problems are real, because if you take, for an example, some of the recent reports, and I don't like to allude to the negative. This is a space of the positive, but we have to paint the picture glaringly. 26.7% of South Africans do not have jobs. These are millions of people. Over 50% of our young people do not have jobs. If you have a matric certificate, you simply cannot or will not find a job in this economy. You find this when you drive a car, you approach traffic lights. You find people who are economically active. These are in their late 20s, in their early 30s, standing by the traffic lights. If you take your mind to a decade ago, people who would be hanging around the traffic lights would be those who are selling wares, trying to market their wares to you. They're still there, but they are blended with those who are begging for money. Where I work at the Wits Business School, there's a bus stop where we take the Gautrain bus and go to Gautrain. It's just directly across the security out of the entrance. It has become a hive of criminal activity, syndicates that are roaming on that corridor between in that area all the way to Rosebank. They steal cell phones. I never thought people would be stealing cell phones in this day and age. I thought these are ubiquitous. Everyone has a cell phone. But they steal cell phones and handbags, typically from women. And a friend of mine, a colleague there, recently was mugged in Rosebank in a busy area, and they took his cell phone and got into a car. And he was telling me about this, and he said, why are these people preying on us? They must go and work. Now we quickly turned this into an academic discussion. I said, Work where? Where are these jobs? And he said, they must just go and work maybe as waiters. And I told the story of a Fonos restaurant that opened in my neighborhood. They wanted 10 to 15 waiters. It's a new Fonos in Irene Mall. And on the day the store was open to give forms, there were over 300 young people queuing to pick up the forms. They want 10 to 15 waiters. What happens to the 285 that don't get their foot in the door? Think about it. What do they do? What do the many matriculants or the many school leavers who don't complete matric do on a day to day when they wake up? What do they wake up to do? What do they wake up to look forward to? What hope do we have to give to them? Does the schooling system prepare them for this reality? And the challenge gets compounded by technology change. The scale or the pace at which companies from mining to manufacturing to services industry are absorbing technology. And this technology displaces labor because this is cost-saving technology. It's labor-saving technology. If you go to a McDonald's in Sunnyside, you try to buy coffee, you're not going to go to the counter to order. You're going to go to a machine. That machine represents X number of jobs. Many mining companies, especially in the platinum sector, I've worked with mining companies, are introducing labor-saving technologies, automation. And this is not even your fourth industrial revolution you're talking about. What happens to, and it's not only just affecting blue-collar workers, but also white-collar workers. When you look at the algorithm settings in various data centers in the back office of many banks, of many financial services companies, and many people are displayed who used to do repetitive tasks or accounting services. What happens to them? How do we create shared value and generate new ideas? Force ourselves to imagine a different future, to imagine solutions anew, to bring about innovation that can help us to tackle these challenges. The next piece I want to talk about alongside education is about the economy. The economy, we see this in the media. Those who still, I was listening to Kamogelo, he was telling us in the group, during group discussions, that he no longer listens to current affairs. I also no longer listen to current affairs. I've not listened to current affairs and people don't believe me because I also dabble as an analyst, and it's a role that I no longer play. I've not listened to current affairs for over a year, and you don't lose anything. You become the most informed person. I don't want to single out radio stations, but I don't listen to certain radio stations because I'm protecting my spirit, I'm protecting my mind. I want to focus on solutions rather than on problems. Similarly, with newspapers, I've significantly reduced my diet of newspapers. Because again, it doesn't enrich. There are many people who are itching to tell you stories. And you get it better, it's enriched because everyone loves to embellish. So it comes to you with some analysis, so you're more informed than buying the newspaper and reading it. So we do have these challenges. They are real. On the front of the economy, we do need to think quite a lot in creating shared value to improve the ecosystem for small business, to improve the ecosystem for entrepreneurship in the country. I look at many reports. There are many young people are battling to get into to start businesses. If you take a look at advanced industrial economies, when there is technology-induced structural change, such as part of what we're having in the industrial sectors, in the mining sector, and even in agriculture in South Africa, the people who are displaced from jobs, they go and start new businesses. So you have one person, starts a business, employs 5 people. That offsets jobs that are lost elsewhere in the economy. We are unable to offset those jobs in this country because the ecosystem for small business is heavily restricted by regulation and additional constraints. So access to finance for young entrepreneurs is very, very difficult. They battle to have collateral, to show banks that we have collateral. We would like to be funded for this business that we are creating, and that there are new solutions that we can think about to overcome these deficiencies. For an example, crowdfunding, new tech-driven solutions that aim at creating, say, digital banks, using stokvels as basis for generating capital for these entrepreneurs. Access to markets. The South African economy is heavily concentrated. It's dominated by large players across the value chain. And many small businesses are battling to access these sectors, from agriculture to services sector, because the big players are dominant, which is why you have the Competition Commission active in the last couple of years, because it's trying to deconcentrate the economy from high levels of concentration by large players. There are also network-related constraints. If you are sitting in a township, trying to start a business, you have limited access to networks, limited access to mentorship, limited access to coaching services. And the examples that you see around you are not examples of success, are examples of failures. To overcome those barriers, psychological barriers, material barriers, is very hard for a young people who is sitting in a rural area or in the township. So these challenges, if we leave them unresolved, we are going to have young people who are very angry, who are very resentful, and who are going to participate in the kind of activities that would affect us as individuals. So we are not safe. We cannot live in our own comfort zone. We cannot create our own little heavens. We can spend money on security, but we're not solving the problem. We can't barricade ourselves from social challenges. One of the things I often say is that if you spend little time in whinging, in being cynical, in debating and discussing the news, you become a positive force for change in society. And I can bet many people here do not participate in negative news. They are not conduits of negative news, false news, or peddlers of cynicism, because you are preoccupied with finding solutions to the challenges that we are pointing to. Recently, the Statistics SA, in its General Household Survey, released some numbers that are not comforting. The rate of growth of households, or rather households, are growing very fast, and they are not yet services or social services, public services, are not keeping up. The infrastructure is under stress. They point out that the second biggest source of income for many households is social grants. We are now at 17 million people who are earning social grants in the country. I'm happy with the fact that people, especially the poor, the indigent, have income protection, have social protection. If you go to many rural areas, the conditions there are very dire. They do need income support. But if you look at the source of that income support, it makes you worry because only 1.8 million South Africans pay 90% of the tax. Translated in percentage, that's about 13% of the working age. And the tax base is not growing. There are no new small businesses that are being created to employ, to contribute to the GDP, to contribute to employment. If you look at countries such as Germany or in the OECD, the advanced industrial economies, small and medium enterprises account for 2/3 of the GDP and over 70% of employment in the economy. Where you find problems, their solutions lie. I think we are a country of great solutions. We are a country of innovation. We are a country that still has potential to be a winning nation, to stand confidently on the global stage. But there are certain things that we need to do right, and one of those is the need to create shared value, is the need to break the walls between ourselves as communities, between communities and government, between communities, government, and business, to work together to mobilize positive energies and to direct these to these wicked problems that we have identified. It's been, I think, 9 years since Partners for Possibility has been in existence. I think you started in 2010. Achieving 1,000 plus partners is a great milestone. I think you one of the pioneers in bringing to concrete reality the idea of shared value. And one of the things that I asked Robin in our discussion when we're doing the podcast is, what are some of the lessons we can harvest from what we've been able to create here to other types of challenges in society, in the economy, in the health system. And this is what we need to constantly think about, because it's very clear, it's demonstrated in this program that shared value, bringing together different minds, bringing together different sectors, generate more value than when we are working on our own, when we are working in silos. So with those words, I want to really encourage all of us here. I want to encourage business leaders to persist in championing these kinds of causes. They may look like lost causes. As G.K. Chesterton says, it is precisely the lost causes that we need to fight to preserve. We need to fight for them to see the light of day. And if you are a social entrepreneur, if you are a social activist, you are an engaged person, you are going to get a lot of criticism. People will call you crazy. They will say, this thing will never work, this stuff, this is lost. Look at what government is doing to our children. Look at what the education system is doing. You have to drown out all those noises, beginning with current affairs. Just do yourself a favor and fast current affairs for a week. You will feel lighter. You will feel lighter. So I think I'm very positive about this country. I think we have great, wonderful people. Change doesn't always come through the masses. You don't need a stadium to bring change, but it's individuals taking a step, doing something that's never been tried before, failing forward, standing up, trying again, learning from their mistakes, talking to another person, and building that powerful network that becomes a catalyst for change in society. And I think we can do it. Thank you.